What's up guys, I'm here in South Korea and I'm about to feast on some Korean noodles. When I first had them a couple years ago, I was kind of suspicious of whether I would like them or not, especially because one form of the cold noodles is in soup, so it's like a cold noodle soup, which I never had before. So now that I'm in South Korea, I of course have to try the cold Korean noodles here. And what's really interesting is that my Korean friends tell me there's differences between the cold Korean noodles in South Korea from the ones in North Korea. So in this video, we're gonna try them both. Now, if this setting kind of looks familiar to you, that's because I'm still at the place where I had the Korean barbecue. Because I was really shocked to learn this, but Koreans eat Korean barbecue and the cold noodles together. Because what they'll do is take a piece of meat and put some cold noodles on it and eat it like a song. So now we're gonna have the South Korean cold noodles. And as you can see, I mean, it looks just like what I had in the States. The noodles are made out of starch and it looks like a ball of yarn. And you got like one piece of meat. I feel that's kind of stingy on the meat. Cucumbers, lettuce, radish, daikon, and of course the signature egg. What my friends tell me I'm supposed to do is give these noodles 2 cuts, horizontal and vertical, because otherwise these noodles, you really can't cut it with your teeth. They're so spongy and resilient. So I'm gonna give this 1 cut. And 2 cut. There's ice in here, of course. It's cold noodle soup. Oh, that's refreshing. Wow, there's something really nice and light about this. You know what? It tastes like radish soup. That makes this really nice, especially after I just had Korean barbecue. Then what I'm supposed to do is kind of mix the noodles so it kind of gets everywhere in the soup, because the starch is supposed to get all over the soup, and that's gonna kind of change the flavor a little bit. Ah, so nice and cooling. I feel like this is the perfect meal after you just had a bunch of meat, because this is like the anti-meat. There's really only 1 slice of meat in here, and every other ingredient just cools your whole body down. The noodles are nice and spongy. What I love about this is, although it's been soaking in the soup for a long time, they don't get soggy. They still have a really nice chew. And they give you 2 sauce bottles. One is vinegar and one is mustard. I'm gonna add some vinegar in here. My Korean friends are protesting the amount I'm adding, and mustard. I love it when things are mustardy, because that mustard just made the soup spicy, and I love noodle soups that are both vinegary and spicy. Oh, so happy. I'm gonna try the soup Asian style. Mustard went up my nose a little bit. I love to put an egg in here because the egg kind of calms everything down a little bit. That's awesome. Mustard overload. The mustard has sunk to the bottom of the soup. I think I just took a big bite of concentrated mustard. Wow. Shake it off. Shake it off. I want to drink the rest of this so much, but it's so concentrated with mustard, I don't think I should do it. That was not smart. Oh, now I'm crying mustard tears. Now this version of the cold noodle soup looks like my version of heaven, where a giant mountain of hot sauce exists. And this is a combination of Korean soy sauce, Korean chili paste, chili powder. I mean, all the things I love in my life concentrated in 1 bowl of noodles, and it looks amazing. So same thing, I'm gonna cut this in half, and then in half again. Give this a nice mix. Look at this. This is just like, it's more hot sauce than there's noodles on this thing. I mean, can I get some more noodles for my hot sauce? You know what? It's not as spicy as I thought. It's actually more sweet. I definitely taste the traditional Korean spicy paste, which in my opinion is not that spicy. Wow, this is definitely not what I thought. I thought it was gonna be a punch in my face spicy. Not at all. Really sweet. Actually, again, pretty refreshing. Definitely a lot of sesame oil, but I feel like I like the soup version better. Well, that was awesome, and now we're gonna go try some cold noodles in North Korea. Wait, no, that's not right. We're gonna go try some North Korean cold noodles in South Korea. I'm not going to North Korea to try noodles. 안녕하세요. I feel like that's one of 3 Korean words I have completely down right now. It's 안녕하세요, 감사합니다, and I think that's Gangnam. I am in a restaurant called Jungin Myeonok. I think that's what it's called. This is a famous North Korean noodle shop here in well, I don't know exactly what this area is called. I can't pronounce it. It's by Ghana. So let's just say it's that. If you want to know the detailed location, check my description box. Language really isn't my thing, but food is, and I'm really excited to be able to eat North Korean noodle soup without actually going to North Korea. Now, from what I understand, the biggest difference between North Korean and South Korean cold noodles is that North Korean cold noodles are relatively simple. They don't have a lot of ingredients in them. Also, you don't need to cut them like we did with the South Korean cold noodles. And if you remember, when we were eating the South Korean noodles, the noodles stayed pretty chewy, pretty bouncy, even though it was sitting in the broth, but that's not the case with North Korean noodles. North Korean noodles will get soggy really quick because it's made with buckwheat. Also, before the noodles started, they brought up obviously some banchan, and they brought us this little noodle soup in a cup. This is literally noodle soup, basically the soup water that's used to boil the buckwheat noodles, and you drink this before you eat the cold noodles. It tastes exactly what I thought it was gonna taste like. Actually I like this. You know what? In Chinese cooking, we really love drinking the soup after dumplings. We call it jiaozitang, and it tastes just like this. Just like the South Korean noodles, there's an egg, what looks like thin cuts of beef. At least they give you more meat in the North Korean noodles. Cucumber, daikon, and I actually really like buckwheat noodles. Again, a big yarn ball shaped noodle. And check out the consistency of this soup. This is nothing like the South Korean cold noodles. This basically looks like just water. I'm sure there's flavor in here, but it literally just looks like water. No spices, not fancy at all. You know what this tastes like? It tastes like salt water. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It just tastes like salt water. I don't feel like there's much flavoring in this at all. There might be some MSG in here, but it's not spicy, it's not vinegary, it's not anything. It's just a little salty. Wow. I mean, I knew it was going to be a lot simpler than the South Korean noodles, but literally there's not much taste at all. I really like the noodles though. I love buckwheat noodles because it's kind of nostalgic for me. Because when I was younger in China, my grandparents used to make me cold, dry buckwheat noodles. They would take the buckwheat noodles and mix it with some soy sauce, some spices, and literally that was one of my favorite dishes. And I haven't had that since I moved to the States, but this texture right here, it's very nostalgic of that dish I had before. Of course, I'm eating this right away, so they're not soggy at all. Really like that texture. I feel like this would be a lot better, even dipped in some seasoning or even mixed without the soup, because the soup really doesn't add anything to this. It's making the noodles slightly salty. That's all the soup, I'm not even gonna call it soup. That's all the salt water is doing. Take some banchan, maybe some kimchi, whatever they give you. Eat it together with the noodles. That's how you give this more flavor. Otherwise, literally just slightly salty noodles. I am excited to try these dumplings. My friends tell me that you gotta have the North Korean dumplings because supposedly, because North Korea is obviously nearer China, the dumplings more resemble the Chinese dumplings, but these are massive. These are like the Chinese dumplings' grandparents. I mean, look at the size of this dumpling. It's like a predatory dumpling that ate 2 other dumplings and grew to be this big. I think we found the mythical cannibal dumpling. And it's really funny. We asked the waiter what is inside these dumplings. They wouldn't tell us because they said it's a secret. They wouldn't even tell us what kind of meat this is. So I'm just gonna bite into this and kind of give you guys my assessment of what I think this is. First of all, I see chives in here. I see chives, I see some green onions. There's definitely some lettuce. Dip it a little bit in soy sauce. There's tofu in here. This is a tofu dumpling. I never had a tofu dumpling in my life. It's kind of like a unicorn. I didn't even know they actually existed. There's a tremendous amount of filling. The skin on these dumplings are so light and airy, which is awesome. I don't really feel like they resemble traditional Chinese dumplings at all. And there's definitely bean sprouts in here. This might be a completely vegetarian dumpling. I'm gonna go ahead and add a bunch of chili powder in this soup and see if that kind of liven things up. This soup at this point is a clown short of a circus. Really nothing going on here. Let me try this with the spice mixed in. Okay, that really didn't do much of anything. And there's really nothing that can get past the salt water taste of this cold noodle soup. It's like I'm eating these noodles out of the ocean right now. So now that I've tried the cold noodles from both Koreas, my assessment is the soup for the South Korean cold noodles is leaps and bounds better than this salt water here. They give you a little spicy mustard, some vinegar, you mix that all up. I'll eat that soup any day of the week. And the North Korean cold noodles, the soup itself is, to me at least, is undrinkable. But the noodles are fantastic. You can tell it's really fresh, it's really springy. And like I said, it really takes me back to my childhood. I think overall, I definitely prefer the South Korean cold noodles over the North Korean cold noodles. Literally everything I had today, it's just absent of any flavor. Besides the noodles themselves, the egg was just a half a hard-boiled egg. The slices of beef were just slices of beef. There's not even salt added to that. Overall, everything's just very bland. And of course, for me, I love an abundance of flavor. So besides the noodles themselves, I didn't really enjoy this. Because obviously, cold noodles is a very popular Korean dish. And I'm so happy that I was able to try two very authentic versions. And I do want to say, this place I'm at right now is super popular. It's always lying out the door. Obviously, people really love this. It's just not personally my thing. So if you want to give it a try, I'll have both places, both locations for you guys in the description box. All right, guys. 안녕히 계세요.